Hello everyone, if everyone's ready, we can start today's webinar. I wish a wonderful day to those who are joining us at today's webinar. It will be about the milestones of the Drug Supply Chain Security Act 2020 of FDA. We will focus on its requirements, challenges, and finally, of course, the aggregation. My name is Volkan, and I will be your host today. The webinar is best when you're involved, and we have prepared some questions for you along this speak. The questions will appear on your screen time to time, and you just need to mark the relevant button. For me, it's important to say that your replies will not be visible to other listeners. Your answers will be kept private. However, the general result of the poll might and probably will be shared with the audience. You can choose to watch the webinar on full screen. In order to do so, just click the Maximize button, which is on the upper right side of your screen. However, if you choose to watch the presentation in windowed mode, you will see some additional windows on the right-hand side. One of the windows is Chat section. You can send your messages and questions to the speakers using this window. Just click the Send Message button and write your message. This section works as private direct message. Your messages will not appear on the other people's screen. VISIOTT Track and Trace Solutions is hosting this webinar, and our both two speakers are from this pioneer company founded in Turkey in the year of 2005. When I say pioneer, I actually mean it. Because, as you know, Turkey is the first country when it comes to implement track and trace systems into the pharma industry. They completed this implementation at 2009, and when this is happening, VISIOTT was the leading partner of this process. The focus of VISIOTT is nothing but pharma today, but their track and trace solutions are being used in different kinds of industries like commercial explosives, agrochemicals, and cosmetics. The company has a 3,000 square meters factory at Ankara, building their machines from scratch all by themselves. They are also developing their own GNU software independently. That is the receipt of their turnkey solutions. Now we can introduce our speakers. Today's first speaker will be Mr. Necdet Çetinkaya. He is the Director of Software Development of VISIOTT Track and Trace Solutions. He is in the pharma industry as a software developer for almost 20 years. He spent his early years at different companies, and now he is preparing to celebrate his 10-year anniversary in VISIOTT. The software development team is led by him, and they are providing solutions not only to run the machines, and also to integrate with different level 4 systems. He is the father of the current software, which is being used in the serialization and aggregation machines. This software is constantly developing and evolving according to the needs of the industry and the customer. He, together with his team, has completed numerous successful integrations and developments over time. Speaking of its educational background, Mr. Necdet graduated from the Marmara University Department of Computer Programming. He has successfully reflected his dynamic integration experiences mainly in the pharma market in many traceability integration projects in the pharma industry. Today's second speaker will be Mr. Özgür Gömeç. He is the Head of Sales and Business Development at VISIOTT Track and Trace Solutions. He has a background in pharmaceutical production industry. He spent 10 years at different stages of medicine production. 5 years ago, when he decided to elevate his career to track and trace systems, he was the production process manager at one of the biggest pharmaceutical factories in Turkey. Thanks to his experience gained in the last 15 years, He can now easily analyze the customer needs, build up projects, and use latest innovative technology to integrate it with the supply chain. As mentioned before, he is now leading the sales and business development department of VISIOTT Track and Trace Solutions. Speaking about his education, he has a bachelor's degree on chemistry, and apart from that, he completed several courses on sales, marketing, and supply chain management. Yes, that's enough talk for me. Now I will pass the microphone to our speakers, two key persons of the most successful track and trace company of Turkey. Mr. Özgür, now I think you can continue. Thank you.
Hello, Volkan. Thank you for this great introduction of this webinar. Welcome to webinar milestones of the DSCSA 2023. We will show you the best cost-effective VISIOTT solutions and American traceability requirements, as well as its challenges and aggregation. First, we will take a look at the basis traceability requirements. Then we will speak about VISIOTT aggregation solutions and the aggregation requirements. Later on, we will take a look at how to make the best choice for your specific needs. Finally, we're going to talk about the challenges of the American traceability. That addition, we will talk about the steps of the correct selection of these machines and the systems. Let's get started the webinar, the milestones of the DSCSA 2023 requirements, aggregation, and challenges. But before, we have a little bit a small question about this webinar. Yes, Volkan. So
yes, now the question is on the screen. You can make your selection by clicking the relevant button. We just like to know, why are you here? I will close the pool soon. Okay, I'm now closing the pool. Thanks for your participation. In a few seconds, we will see the results on your screen. This is an interesting result. Thanks for your interest for VISIOTT track and trace solutions. Thank you. So I think now we can continue.
Yes, thank you, Volkan. This is very interesting results for us that we're gonna talk about more VISIOTT track and trace solutions. Let's get clear about the drug counterfeiting around the world. I'm gonna talk about the first, what do you mean the drug counterfeiting? That we will talk about the more details about the American traceability system and the VISIOTT track and trace solutions. You can't fix a problem if you can't see it. So the production and the supply of the drug is a comprehensive process that affects human health. So let's talk about the drug counterfeiting and the important role of the track and trace on this. Track and trace technologies can provide real-time supply chain visibility. This is very interesting point that's at this point. By doing so, it makes the drug counterfeiting literally impossible to economies of the countries. To make the explanation easy, let's map out a simple counterfeit supply chain. Wrote that as an example, we have a fake manufacturer, we have a fake wholesaler, we have a fake retailer. Just imagine the fake product produced in one country. Due to the complex nature of the drug supply chain, it is quite possible for a drug travel along one country before reacting to end user. Every step will affect the safety of the product. If none of these steps uses the track and trace technologies, those fake drugs will travel along the supply chain and reach to the end user. At the end of the day, and we unfortunately have a patient with a fake drug in their hands. Prevention of this is a mystery which is already solved. In order to track your products, you need to assign identification numbers to every package. There is a common way to put identification labels onto a product which is coded with machine-readable codes. Therefore, you can prevent the drug counterfeiting. When we do not use, for example, one unique ID number to every single product, the drug serialization system little bit problem for us. Therefore, it is necessary to cooperate with stakeholders, with involving in both technology as well as the supply chain to establish a drug serialization system. Pharmaceutical serialization laws have been adopted by the authorities using international standards against drug counterfeiting. Also, it has been mandatory for all supply chain stakeholders to implement the laws. After this little introduction, I want to tell you what's going on in the USA traceability system. The United States enacted Drug Quality and Safety Act in November 2013 for the fight against the drug counterfeiting. The Pharmaceutical Supply Chain Security Law aims to monitor prescription drugs in the United States with I mean, the law of the DSCSA outlines all the requirements for the track and trace system of the manufacturers, wholesaler distributors, repackers, third-party logistics, pharmacies, or dispensers involved in the supply chain. Therefore, it has an important place for the American drug markets. Moving on another slides, I will tell you about the world milestone of American traceability system. I want to talk a little bit about the DSCSA roadmap of the webinar. As you can see on the screen, the DSCSA path is very interesting in our hardware and software system. We always have to use any kind of the traceability solutions worldwide. We are at the red point. We never too late for anything. We have to time the fuel in engaged the solutions. Don't worry about it. When the dates show January 1st, 2015, the phase one, which name is of the DSCSA began by requiring of pharma manufacturers to print lot numbers on packaging for all prescription drugs. The second stage on November 27, 2018, Americans track and trace pharmaceutical manufacturer and repackers must include the unique serial numbers and expiration dates on prescription drug packaging. This information must be human-readable formats and GS1 barcodes. Then also my colleagues, Mr. Necdet, will talk about the other slides, then more detail about the technical detail about the codes of the as per United States traceability markets. Manufacturers and the repackers also had to capture and store transaction information, which name is TI, history, TH, and the transaction tables TS in their database for at least 6 years. In the meantime, I'm gonna continue the third stage on November 27, 2019. This pending deadline affects the pharma wholesalers who must authorize to verify prescription drugs before the reselling them. I mean, this is the last year, they must only buy and sell products with the serial numbers and the right barcodes, as well as the capture TI, TH, and the TS for creating proper documents for product tracking. They will also need to verify sealable returns using the verification router service. Next, on November 27, 2020, this deadline will affect the dispensers who will also need to have processes in place to verify all medicines they buy before the selling them to customers. They will need to store all information, traceability information in there. In the future, this is the final destination, I guess. 2023. By the end of 2023, the entire supply chain must be DSCSA compliant. Compliant unit level traceability, including aggregation. Also, we're gonna talk about more detail about aggregation needs in this webinar, will be mandatory. As you can see, the fuel traceability system, which dispenser will also join soon, will be put into use in America 2023. We are in here like a red point I mentioned before. We have one question. Volkan, this is your stage.
Yes, now our listeners can see the question on their screen. We would like to know, do you need an aggregation solution as per the new DSCSA requirements? You can say, yes, you need a manual one, or you may need an automatic aggregation solution, or maybe currently you do not need, but in the future you will. Or you can select other and write your own answer. In a few seconds, the pool will be closed and the results will be with you. Okay, if everyone ready, I will now close the pool. Okay, and now we can see the results. I can see that most of us needs an automatic aggregation solution and most of us selected other. We are waiting for your messages and questions in the Q&A section. Now we will continue with our second speaker, which is Mr. Necdet. Okay. Yes, you can go on. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Volkan. In today's webinar, until this time, we have tried to explain the problems of drug counterfeiting and how the DSCSA timeline. Now, let's talk about the DSCSA requirements. The first requirement of the DSCSA is the product identification, so we can define as serialization. In apparent words, this means that all the manufacturers and repackagers must use a unique product identifier on their drug packages. There is an easy way and fast way to make this happen. The 2D data matrix symbology will be using for similar purposes remaining of the world. It will also be used in the US market as shown in the picture. You can see as an example in the picture. So here are some key reasons why we choose, or why the other legislation choose the 2D data matrix symbology. Because it's using less space due to its relatively higher data density. Even if a data matrix printed in a lower resolution, it's still sufficient to read and decode. The data matrix can be read in any position in different angles. Also, it has a greater fault tolerance, which is up to 30%. However, the serialization is not finished with the item level. Just putting serialized label on the bottle is not enough, or the cartridge. The limit of the serialization is far beyond. The homogeneous bundles, cases, and the pallets needs to be serialized. Nowadays, most of us are familiar with the NDC and the UPC before we started the DSCSA. In this context, unfortunately, these are not enough for serialization requirements. We need additional identifiers. In this context, I will try to explain what are these additional identifiers and why we need them. At this point, GS1 helps us and making it easier to identify the trade items. Thanks for them. In DSCSA, we use the listed identifiers the following as GTIN, SGTIN, SCC, SSCC as a main identifier for us. The main difference between GTIN and the NDC is that NDC is used only for drugs, but the GTIN can be used for all trade items. If we have also the type product like cosmetic in-house, it will help us for standardization. For serialization, we can use GTIN 14 instead of NDC, but it will generate it from the NDC especially. On the other hand, as we discussed in the previous sections, the upper levels of the production and the logistic units are also need to be serialized. To identify the product or each unit, SGTIN is used for these purposes. SGTIN means serialized global trade item number. The latest one, the identifier used for serializing logistic unit is SSCC, Serialized Shipping Container Code. SSCC is a globally unique number. For DSCSA, the SSCC are most used to identify the mixed logistic units or partial cases, bundles, and pallets. I believe now we know more or less about the product identification or symbologies and the other things. I would like to jump a slightly different topic. As you know, most of the drugs are sold by the bottle in the US market. Özgür will show us about the bottle serialization line. Okay, Özgür, could you show us for this?
Yes, Necdet, thank you. Now, we're going to talk about the bottle labeling and a serialization station. That's, in my humble opinion, this machine is designed very simple and the end users. So very complex design also in there. VISIOTT bottle labeling and a serialization station automatically prints and applies the labels on the bottles of the products in compliance with the American traceability legislation. The system can print different information on the label, including the automatic code and serial number and expires dates, or the batch number, etc. What you want to print in there, that's the machine or the system will be printed automatically. The bottle labeling and the serialization station also reads and verifies the codes on the labeling using one industrial camera that's integrated before. Then in terms of the efficiency of the line's OEE value, that the system is useful for the requirements because they are not using any additional hardware and the software for the checking information. Furthermore, the system supports OCR, OCV for the verification of the human readable tags. Integrated the reject mechanism removes any fault items from the line with a pneumatic piston or compressed air. In addition, the turntables will be integrated like option. That's the solution to be integrated into the packaging lights with any time. I mentioned before very useful and the complex design that will be integrated in a kind of the fueling production line. If you have any more question, please let us know after the webinar. Our sales team will reach out to you as soon as possible, or please send the question and the Q&A answer. We know that you can use it in there during the webinar. We will answer end of the webinar. Necdet, thank you for your time. This stage is yours.
Okay, Özgür, thank you for this presentation of the VISIOTT bottle labeling and serialization station. Now, I would like to speak about the transactions, which is another topic for the DSCSA. Basically, a transaction is when the transfer occurs. So, what is the transfer? The transfer is the situation when the ownership of the product changes. According to the DSA, all the transfer needs to be notified with the transactions. We will investigate further these transactions, but now let me quickly tell about the exceptions. These exceptions will not require a notification to the DSCSA. What are these? Intra-company distributions, such as internal warehouse transfers, transfer between the branch of the manufacturers, dispensed person inspection, public health emergencies, as we today faced with the pandemic, COVID-19, and distribution among hospitals under common control, product sample distribution, blood and the blood components for transfusion, certain medical kits, and IV products. As we already mentioned about the exceptions, we will go to get deeper into transactions. Since 1 July 2015, each trade partners must exchange transaction information. The FDA explained what is the transaction in the three major titles. These are transaction information, which is cover the current transaction details. Transaction history contains transaction for previous transaction informations. Transaction statement as a general declaration for required by the law. In the previous slide, we have talked about how FDA described transactions and what are the requirements. Let's go to the details and start the first one, transaction information. In the transaction information, we need to know which product or products and what is the dosage and the national drug code, container size. For example, one case contains 20 items, and the container count in that shipment, and lot number, transaction date. If more than 1 day after the date transaction, if you have shipped the products in 20 hours later, you must also specify the shipment date in this information. And the latest one, the business name and the address of the trade partner, the old owner and the new owner. So you will need to include this information in the transaction information. Transaction history. After describing the transaction information, let's continue with the transaction history. The system needs to know each prior transaction information. So while creating a new transaction information, this information must be recorded into its history. The transaction statement records the following information and requires the trading partners transferring ownership of the specific product to the following information. So we will look at the transaction statement. Requirements is authorized as required under DSCSA. So you must specify the authorization business type and the role must be defined in the statement. And it must be known the received product from a person or another trade partner is authorized as required under the law. So basically, it must be known that if the previous owner is valid and authorized or not. If you have a product from the multiple suppliers, this assertion must be referred to all those suppliers. So you need to get all these transaction statements and also history from that suppliers from each. Receive transaction information at the transaction statement from the prior owner of the product as required under the law. All transaction information and statement must be received from the previous owner. Unknowingly ship a suspect or the product. To prevent this, all the products must be verified before shipment. In order to do, you must have to ask verification router services and integrate it with wholesalers and manufacturers. And to continue with the systems process in place to comply with the verification requirements according to the law. The product has to be verified in 24 hours before shipment. If this cannot be done, those products must be considered as suspicious. In order to make this verification, you have to have a required systems in place up and running. Unknowingly provide false transaction information. The transaction information and the shipment must match with each other. Every single shipped product must be available in the transaction information. And then other topics, you couldn't change the transaction history. In order to prevent this, the transaction history must be read-only, and the system you are using must not let you change anything on the transaction history as a requirement in the DSCSA. Okay. As we learned definition about the transaction, so we need to try to learn how to do the data exchange. Yes, I can hear you. We have an implementation guide from GS1. At the moment, we need to give special thanks to GS1 again. Yes, we have some standards, but even in these standards has some different versions. Some of the customers integrated before with the PCS 1.1, or some of them is using the latest one, 1.2. Or in the future, we are, according to the timeline, it's still continuing, and they will be used the PCS 2. Nowadays, we are discussing. Even in these cases, we use the same version. The trade partners you have different, they can use different extensions. Yes, we talked internally US DSCSA requirements, but what happens if you export your products to another country, which is required product tracing or serialization requirements? For example, European countries, Brazil, Russia, Turkey, etc. You will need to follow some different data exchange requirement for these markets. Okay. We just talked about with the serialization, product identification, but we will start to aggregation now. In its simple definition, aggregation is to put serialized items into upper packaging serialized levels. For example, putting the items to the cases and pallets. But aggregation is never mentioned as a standard requirement until 2023. Reason why we need two aggregations, because it helps us to supply chain, to identification and verification process. It simplifies warehouse operations like shipping, inventory management, and other in-house transfer operations. The aggregation can help us for decommission operations. You can easily perform decommissioning for multiple items just scanning the carrier unit code. After we define the aggregation process, we have different packaging types in the US market, and as we discussed before, the US market generally have bottles, and these are putting in some shipper cases. In order to aggregate them, we need to scan each item and make a relation between item and cases. In order to do this, one approach is take off the bottles from the case, scan, and put them back. But as you know, this is a time loss operation for your operation team, and you have many leaks at that moment. But maybe we have a different approach. Now Mr. Gömeç will show us a more practical solution about this.
Thank you, Necdet, for this useful information. I hope it has been of great benefit to the participants. This hopefully we used it on time. So I'm going to talk about this slide. There's a little bit aggregation solutions that's useful for the American traceability systems. We have different aggregation solutions that we need to be end-user VRS that we will create and build aggregation solutions in their requirements. First, I'm going to talk about a little bit the aggregation. What does it mean? The aggregation is a process that provides easy access to serial numbers of packages within territory packages by establishing parent-child relationship. It's a way you can access the serial number of the package and the drugs without opening any territory package. Actually, we produce dedicated one inspection station for the American traceability system called named DSCSA. That's I would like to talk about and demonstrate the VISIOTT 316-degree reliable and the cost-effective solutions in the machine. The main function of the VISIOTT inspection system for the bottle pre-aggregation station is to create a connection between the data matrix code and the helper code of each serialized bottle for the next aggregation operations. The next aggregation operations, they capture some created data in their production line with our solutions. That for more information, please send us. Then we will monitoring this your production lines accordingly. Then I'm going to continue to pre-aggregation station. That's the system dedicated to US markets as per the SCSA requirements. A smart verification system reads the 2D data matrix code on the label on the serialized bottles. You know, as you remember, I explained it, the bottle serialization and labeling station, that we will print each data matrix code on the label and the bottle labeling and the serialization station. After that, the United States using some booklet top sorter machine that are put in top on each bottle. That's then the products coming into the bottle pre-aggregation station. This system is including 7 industrial cameras that also reads visible and invisible helper codes printed on the cap on the bottom of the bottle. In addition, the system uses a special lightning to read all codes on the bottle simultaneously. The serialized bottles are moved linearly by the conveyor, especially designed for the pharmaceutical industry. During this process, the system prints a helper codes on the cap or bottom of the bottle. The rejected bottles are separated from the line into a reject bin that's integrated, as you can see on the screen. That the system is capable of the processing up to 200 bottles per minute. That's also depend on the bottle dimensions. So I would like to talk about a little bit software integration in there, because it's about the time to talk about this. The VISIOTT software solutions integrated to many different level 4 solutions in the United States markets. That we have done before more than 25 turnkey projects dedicated to US markets. I would like to initiate the next question at the point to our dear listeners. Volkan, can you make it happen? What is the next question?
Yes, the next question is already on the screen. It's about the production lines of our listeners. And I wonder if they are confident with their production line. I would like to know what you think. Do you think your production line is working at its peak, or it's way behind of your rivals? If you say no, please read all the selections. If you are you don't like the speed of your line, please select A. Or the general quality is not really good for you, you can select the B. Or it's very hard to use and you are paying higher training costs, you can select C. If you are comfortable with your current line, you can select the last option, which is yes, we are very comfortable with our production line. I will close the pool soon, and I will just wait a second for you to finish your answers. If everyone is ready, I'm closing the pool. And now here comes the results. I see that most of our listeners are confident with their production line, which is great. So I think my job is done here. I can pass the microphone to Mr. Necdet. Yes, now Necdet, you can go on.
Okay, thanks, Volkan, one more time. We have already discussed the points and the requirements. Now we will try to share our experiences over the time and face challenges. As you know, the Özgür and Volkan mentioned before, Turkey is the first country in the track and trace projects to complete to end-to-end solutions. So most of the challenges I will list in here, but maybe we can discuss later on in the Q&A and answer sections. The whole process, the first and most common challenge, it will affect your overall equipment efficiency. So at the beginning, the slowest machines or the operations reduce your speed. So when you integrate or implement a solution with the lowest speeds, and you must training your operators, it must be an easy application to understand by your operators. Otherwise, if they will try to understand the process, and it can be make time lose in the operation. On the other ones, all artwork updates and different package types. For all SQAs, you must update your artworks. Maybe you need additional space, put data matrix on your labels, on your package, and other things. Different package types, as usual in the US market, uses bottles. We have already mentioned before. We need to aggregate with the bottles and find the easy way to aggregate them. As Özgür mentioned in the previous slides, with the pre-aggregation, you can print a helper code and you can scan these ones and match and complete your aggregation requirements at that moment. Other challenge we can face, different printing technologies according to the packaging types. We need to use pre-printed labels, thermal inkjet transfer, and continuous inkjet printer or laser printing. But according to these printing types, the technologies, they must have some advantage and disadvantages. So you can choose and you can decide whatever you use. But while you are choosing these technologies, you can face with the problems, a challenge with your image processing requirements. Until today, we are using the smart cameras, sometimes maybe easy, but for different requirements, different package types, you need to make your image processing tools or cameras must be configurable and flexible for further requirements. If we continue with the challenge, with the rework operations will increase according to the past, because the serialization projects internally have different kind of challenge and other process in the warehouse. Let's think about a scenario for the custom shipments. You have a one pallet and 1,000 items inside, and each pallet has 10 cases. but you have an order with 85 items. So for this palette, you need to remove 15 items before preparing the orders. So with the homogeneous case, you need to convert this one a partial case. At that moment, as you know, you need to change the labels from the SGTN to SSCC. At this process, you need a quick rework functionality or rework operations in your warehouse module, even in shipment phase. Additional IT requirements for data exchange. You have additional hardware and data storage requirements because the serialization data will increase your data capabilities. And the software you have used needs to be capable to compress the data and the logs. On the other hand, as you know, the multiple the DSCSA, we don't have a one repository which we provide the verification service. Even in today in Turkey, we have a one repository for verification. We have still some small problems between the trade partners while exchanging the data. But in the DSCSA, you have many trade partners and many verification router services. So you need to integrate all of them and see the logs and see what's happening in your software. On the other hand, for the data exchange, we will just discuss about for trade partners data change. We have also, if you have producing some products in the CMOs or 3PS or CPOs, you need to exchange serialization data, and many of them has not a good interfaces sometimes. Maybe you can develop your internal interface or vice versa. And we mentioned before the previous slides, we need the transaction history data and transaction information. Even today, most of the trade partners select the EPCIS. We will still need the flexible, quick, adaptable software solution to exchange these data. Another data exchange requirement, as we discussed as a challenge, export countries. If they have regulations with the serializations like Turkey, Russia, or European Union, they have different systems and different data types, not EPCIS, for example. So your solution must be also support these ones. On the other hand, the latest challenge we can discuss your standard operational process, which is for QA perspective. Most of the business process will be updated after the DSCSA. So you need to review your SOPs and you need to add additional steps, controls, and checks for your validation strategies. Okay, I think I have finished. Maybe we can take with the questions for challenge in the next session, Volkan, or maybe we can continue with the other question. I'm not sure.
Yes, thanks, Necdet. Now I will continue with the last question of today. I'm transmitting it to the screen, and I think our listeners can see the question now on their screens. I would like to ask one last question. Can you please tell me if your current aggregation solution is ready for the next step of DSCSA? Please select the answer which suits you best. If you do not have an aggregation solution in your production area, please select the first one. If you expect to have some integration issues with the next DSCSA requirements, you can go with the second one. If you already have an aggregation solution in place, but it is not fast enough, please select the third answer. If you're okay with your current one, you can select the last one. I will wait a while before closing the last pool of today. I'm closing the pool in a few seconds. if everyone's ready. Thanks for your participation. I see that most of our listeners do not have an aggregation solution at all, and almost rest of them is confident with their current solution. I think that's great. Thanks for your participation again. Now we will continue with the Q&A section. In this section, I will ask the questions to our speakers, which you write using the chat section during our webinar. If you didn't write your questions yet, you can make it happen now. Just click the Send Message button, which you see on the bottom right of your screen. Your questions will be sent privately to the speakers. And while I'm transmitting these questions of yours, I will keep your name with me. So now we have some questions here. Now they are keep coming. Okay, I can go with the first one. One of our listeners likes to know how long it will take to implement your solutions to our production lines. Yes, guys, you can continue.
Yeah, Volkan, Necdet, I'm going to talk about this case I want to answer. Yes, we have been hearing this question a lot of in recent times, because none of is chasing the after the machines that are sold in there. There are only sales-oriented companies. For this reason, we there's a great importance to the after-sales support and the complete production in a short periods of the time. So we can manufacture these systems is a short date and time. For example, 8 weeks. We are able to provide to recurrent machine as per any requirements.
Yes. Okay. Thanks.
The next one. Is there any question?
Yes, actually, I have a similar question. I'd like to ask it to you without losing any time. He says that I'm not comfortable with the efficiency of my current production lines. How fast can I switch to VISIOTT serialization and aggregation solutions? Yeah,
actually, I gave the answer to this. That thanks to our ability to integrate it quickly, we can do it SAT 1 or 2 days in their factory. So we will respond quickly that we have made change in manufacturers and made serious changes I'm going to talk about, right? With the serious growth in the last times that we can meet all needs to meet our experienced employer. So yes, we will do it in a short time. That's including for example, there's a manufacturer in 8 weeks. That's 1 or 2 days for the SAT that we will capture, and that's for 9 weeks. That's enough for us.
Okay, you are saying 9 weeks. It's a very short period. Thank you for great answer. So I'm jumping to another question. One of our listeners says that the VRS requirement is for verification of unit level serial, or bundles and cases are also under this.
Okay, Volkan, I think it's related with me. As you know, according to the GS1, it has already created a standard for these. So at this standard, you can ask each unit, if it is bundle, case, or whatever else, you can just share a data link and check the connectivity before, and you can return back the your verification result with internally or not. You can just ask, and you can create this verification message with you internally. If this is enough for you, Mr. Makarnan, maybe I can explain more about this.
Okay, maybe just wait a while for him to respond. So I have another question waiting. Actually, it's a very strict question. It says that, are you supporting the validation process of your machines?
Yes, I can help about this issue for the validation request. As you know, for the pharma sector, validation is the most important point for use the lines. So we are supporting, we are delivering our all document sets with our lines and our softwares. We are sharing our hardware design specification, software design specification, and also functional specification. If you need, we can also support in the PQ time with the creating scripts for you and provide support to preparing your PQ scripts.
Okay, thanks for the answer. I have finished my questions, and there are no questions from our listeners also. I think that is all for today. I would like to say a big thank you to our listeners who made this webinar fantastic with their participation. And of course, our two very important speakers. We had an opportunity to gather some valuable information from them. Thanks. I'm closing the session now, but I'm not saying farewell. Let's meet again next time.